in common, and then we could have each group kind of report back and discuss things that way. Would that be okay? Just, I think, a functional way to kind of get at things. So does that make sense? So if Jordan will, I think Jordan, you're the host, so you probably have control over that. If you want to, you probably know how to do that, Jordan, or do you want me to? Do you want to shift me?
I'm going to give it a shot.
Okay.
I will try and do the breakout groups, and I'll.
Awesome. If you struggle, let me know.
Fails miserably, just let me.
Cool, I can fix it. So that's what we'll do. Okay, we'll start this with and that's kind of what we'd like to do with the community practice. I think is get as much, again, dialogue, interaction, where the trainings are more kind of, not totally, but more one directional. So, so we'll break out, I think let's do 7 minutes. I think that would be good. And you get a minute of warning time, so if you could do that, we'll break out, I'd say 3 or 4 is good, if you don't mind. And we'll spend 7 or 8 minutes doing that. So rock and roll, awesome. And so the topics are questions about billing documentation, any stuff that's working and what's not working. And then we'll use that to have, to move into the next topics.
All right, guys, I think I got it. We're going to give her a shot.
All right. Oh, and Jordan, okay, you are recording this, so great.
Hi.
Hello. We have everybody in.
Oh no, I have no audio.
You can't hear me?
I can now.
Oh, you can? Okay.
Yeah. I'm like, it might be me.
We have everybody in breakout rooms doing discussions right now, but they should be coming back here in like 4 minutes. So
Okay.
what we have everybody just kind of discussing right now is what questions they have about billing and documentation and what you're doing that's working right now versus what you're doing that you're struggling with and maybe isn't working as well. And then we're going to just come back together and kind of discuss it.
Okay. I may go grab a quick soda because I'm having a morning over here.
Oh, I know, right?
Caffeine might be a benefit. So I will see everyone in the main room in just a couple minutes then.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks, Jordan.
Hey, Jordan. I just saying it was weird. I had on my calendar, I just saying what the Zoom link was. It was weird, but it said the meeting was canceled. So but that's worked before. So I don't know what happened. Can I get your, and you don't have to share if you don't want to, but I realize I don't have your cell number, like your work cell. Do you have that to give out or no?
Yeah.
If I need to call you. Okay, let me pull up my. Was that the number I called or is that your
That
work
was
cell?
my office number, which that works too, because that works in either my Brookings or my Pure office. But my cell number is 605.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm gonna add a new contact here.
And we'll have everybody coming back here in about 20 seconds, just so you know.
Oh. Could you email it to me? Would that be okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure can.
Cool. And there's usually a minute after it gets to 0, I think, or maybe not.
Okay.
Sometimes it does that. Yeah, they have like a warning minute.
Gotcha. Oh, okay.
If you just email it to me, that way I'll be good. All right. 20 seconds left here. All right, sweet. So I think we got everybody back. Uh-oh, multiple audios, huh? Did you all have trouble talking? So like you could hear me talking too, or? Oh, wow. Well, I'm glad you didn't give me your cell, Jordan. Everybody would have been calling you on the weekends. That's weird. Well, sorry about that. Waste of time. You couldn't hear me. You couldn't talk. Well, I guess could we get a volunteer? That's weird. They did that. Could we get? Let me discuss that. Shared. Oh, okay. So maybe it was people in shared offices. I gotcha. That makes sense. Okay. Well, I guess I'd like to just go through. Yeah, so I guess that's right. Maybe we should think about that. So when you're talking and somebody else is right next to you, they're hearing both conversations. So how about this then? Could folks then just type kind of if that didn't work, could you type in then in the chat some things, questions, what's working, what's not working, if you wouldn't mind. And then we'll just go from there, I guess, if you weren't able to really use that. And then maybe, I guess, for the future, it's hard to I don't know if people can go, I see folks in the conference room. I don't know when to bill for CE. Do the billing. That's a good one. But it's also we're thinking documentation too, not just invoicing. Okay, billing's working, no issues. Okay, cool. Great, so we'll just start at the top. Would anybody like to share how billing for CE is going, like how you're doing billing for CE?
Hi, this is Deb
Hey.
from Aberdeen. And
Deb.
I guess we haven't, can you hear me?
I can hear you just great, yep.
Okay. I guess we haven't billed yet for CE and just wondering when we can bill, or do we have to wait till an end of a process?
Okay, cool. Jordan, do you want I know we talked about that yesterday. Do you want to handle it? Or do you want?
And what is a CE?
Awesome.
Customize employment.
So customized employment, yeah, it's one of the services.
So Deb, just
I mean,
to
do we
make
do monthly billings like we do with our regular billings we do for VR in the state, or is it when we're done with a section?
So it is when you're done with each section is the way that we kind of had it set up. So you know how discovery is
Okay.
set up in the 5 or 6 different stages, you bill at the end of each stage. Now, when you get to where you're moved into job development, where you're just billing hourly, then that's where you can go to monthly. So it's a little bit different than how we have billing for other services, but the reason that we kind of did it that way for customized employment is because there is such a focus on that communication and making sure that everybody's on the same page. Doing it that way allowed for more collaboration between the provider and the counselor and the individual supports and things like that. So we wanted to make sure that each stage was done completely before we did billing for that.
Okay,
Jordan,
so
go ahead, Deb.
do you keep track of the hours, or is it just one flat rate? I mean, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
That's okay. So yep, it's hourly. So you keep track of all of the hours that you put in, and then just as you get done with each stage, you submit those hours. So like for the home and neighborhood visit, if you guys did 10 hours over 2 months, because that's how long it took you to do all of that, then you bill those 2 hours or those 10 hours at the end of the 2 months.
Thank you.
Constantly tracking your hours, you just bill them at the end of the stage.
Jordan, I have a quick question. So at the end of a stage, does it have to be approved that it was done to fidelity before we can bill for that stage?
That's kind of what we're encouraging. And the reason for that is, again, it's a good thing to just get everybody on board. Make sure that the counselor knows what's going on, the rest of the team knows what's going on, the individual knows what's going on, and that it gives kind of an opportunity for one last check that was everything done the way that it was supposed to be. And is there anything that we forgot? You know, is there something that we could have looked into, or somebody that we could have talked to, or a discovery activity that we could have tried, you know, based on the different stages that would contribute to and kind of help to build that information for that person's case.
So, and I think that that's a great question about fidelity. And so I think that that's part of what we're figuring. And again, this is just CE we're talking about, but the conversation that we're having can be broader as well, or she is broader. So the folk, like there's a group that I'm supporting right now, kind of mentoring through, right? So I'm involved in approving each kind of step of the work. So the assumption there is that hopefully I'm not approving things that aren't, you know, up to fidelity. And but there will be a point when you know you're practicing and you don't have myself or Doug involved, and so that is like a you know that's going to be another kind. So the question is, who's doing the quality assurance check there, right? Which is typically it's going to be you doing, you know, the provider, the practitioner, making sure that it's quality before they submit anything, but then also the payer or VR. But you won't have to do, you know, you're not scoring it like using a fidelity scale for each step, right? Does that make sense? Like you won't be doing that typically is a process that we do at the end once the decision record is completely done. I guess you could if you wanted to, but in the states we're working, that's not an official part of the process. You know, people score fidelity, they get trained, they score fidelity after, and then you learn, you know, what quality is. The C is just kind of a QA tool to ensure it continues. But no, in no state are they actually like doing a fidelity review for stage 1 on its own, if that makes sense. That's not the expectation is you learn what fidelity is, and I mean, you know, what some places are kind of, you know, they're using it as a tool to just remind themselves, but the instructions, all that should be in there when people are learning. So it's like the next step, I think, that we got to figure out how to ensure the quality happens once people get outside of, you know, the direct mentorship from Doug or I. So cool, great. All right. So what about, yeah, I don't do the billing. Are there, and again, it's not just billing, but we want documentation too, which is typically, you know, obviously you're not gonna get paid if the documentation isn't solid because that's the product. Are a lot of folks, how it works is like you do or if you're practicing, you're doing the work and then it gets sent somewhere else and you're not involved in that process, like there's HR or something. Is that how it works in most places? And so the assumption would be that if there is any problem with documentation and invoicing, that would eventually come back to you, but it would be channeled through HR. Okay. So so are most people tracking hours then? And so you'll hand over like whatever the documentation is, and then you'll give people their hours, and then they'll put it in an invoice for you. Yeah. Can somebody talk about that?
Yeah, for like me, my staff do all the legwork, and they put it on a billing, and then I go through it and do the final billing and do all the comprising of the information and send off the bill.
Okay. So there's kind of a mediator, intermediary. You're the person between. Okay, cool. Anybody else? Is anybody doing it differently where like the staff themselves are also responsible for the invoices and the
We
reporting?
do that at Career Connections. My employment specialists are all responsible for keeping track of their own billing hours. They create their own invoices. They send them out to the counselors. So if there's an error on any part, it would go right back to
Right
them.
back to them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is no
Okay.
middle person.
Okay. And are you a smaller organization? Is that why you've set up that way? Or is it just that has worked for you? I think, and I'm not saying one's good or one's better or not. I think that's both of them can work well. Why did you decide to do it that way? Just
It's
curious.
just always been that way. I've been here over 10 years and that's just how it was when I started. So
Okay, cool. And I think part of the community practice too is, and again, this may not be an issue if it's working, like do what works is kind of the ultimate theme, but that part of this community practice is that if people are interested in if there's an inefficient process or something that isn't working, that we can find a way for y'all to talk, so we have a list of everybody that's here. We'll send out that list and then people can email questions. Hey, maybe I'd like to talk to you about, you guys do your own billing. We'd like to look into that. Would you mind, Kayla, which services do you all, like your own staff are billing for? What services are those?
all of them. We
Yeah, could you-
we do anything from job placement, situationals. It's been a while since we've done like a comprehensive eval, but we do all of those.
Okay, so for all those services, cool, then your staff themselves are.
Yep, they
are
track
responsible for
their own personal caseload. They do all of their own invoices and everything.
Okay, cool. And it's working, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool, awesome. Does anybody have any questions about that for Kayla? Okay, cool. And so then the other question that came up about texting. So that was, Jordan, also something that we talked about, texting and emails. It seems to be, and I'm not the expert on this, but when I reviewed the billable time policy, it seems like the test is like quarter hour, like that's kind of the threshold. Like if you call somebody, leave a message, that's not really billable. That took you probably 30 seconds. Texted a client and they didn't get a response, that's not billable. So it seems like, that really is kind of the threshold, is the quarter hour. Jordan, would you like to add? I mean, there's a whole, we have a table of that we can share. That'd probably be good if you don't have, and I'm assuming this is all a place they can go see it. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, so to you guys' credit, and it probably isn't helpful, but we know how confusing it is to try and kind of sort out how to bill appropriately and what's the best way to bill for short contacts like text messages and leaving voicemails for clients and emails and things like that. That it's just something that the way that our services were set up when we kind of set up the original billing rates where you bill at a quarter hour, we were meeting with clients in person and we weren't doing a lot of things virtually. And so it's something that just as technology has kind of come along, we've had to figure out a better way to make the new technology and the new processes work with some of our old processes. So we know that this has been a question that people have had, and we know that it's something that people are struggling with. So I appreciate that it got brought up. So just to kind of share with you guys, we added recently some examples of like, if you do this, this is billable versus if you do this, this isn't billable, to hopefully kind of clarify what our thoughts are about it. But I mean, just because we're all here and we can have this conversation in person, kind of the goal is, if you guys are going to bill 0.25 of an hour or a quarter of an hour, we want it to be as close to a quarter of an hour worth of time as possible. So, if you send a quick text to a client that says, hey, how is work going? Just wanted to check in. That's going to take you 30 seconds. We don't want you to necessarily bill for 30 seconds or 15 minutes for 30 seconds worth of time. Now, if you texted the client and said, hey, how is work going? They responded back and said, hey, I have this going on. I have a question about this. And you sat there and texted with them back and forth for 15 minutes. then absolutely we want you to be reimbursed for that time. But it's just a matter of now that we have that ability to have short contacts with clients, which is more efficient for you guys. We know it's more efficient for the clients and things like that, but we still have to make sure that the time that's billed is equivalent to the time that's spent on that contact is kind of where we're going with those examples. So
This is Julie, if I can interject real quick from Aberdeen. I actually had a question about that texting thing. The gentleman that we're working with actually is mostly nonverbal, so he uses a communication device. And so that is our only way to contact him if we're not in person, which we obviously have not done a whole lot because of COVID. So that is our only way to communicate with him is via text. He does message through Facebook Messenger, and he does not like to do the video chatting thing. We've tried because he has an iPad with a communication app on it. While he would have to use his iPad to do Zooms or whatever. Well, then he can't use his communication device on it at the same time, if that makes sense. So how do we still stick to the same rules like that? Because that is our only method of contacting him is via Messenger, via text. So then we would have to do still the 15 minutes.
I would say in general, but Julie, thank you for bringing that up because that's a really good example of there's so many different scenarios. I mean, you guys know the variety of people that we work with and the variety of situations that they have. And so we're going to have situations that are very unique, like the situation that Julie just outlined, where this client has a very unique communication need. They've determined a way that works best for him. And that is with this texting, and that's what's working. And we want you guys to do what's working. So if you run into a situation like that, that's still kind of outside what those guidelines are, that's where you can just communicate with your counselor, communicate with the district supervisor, and you guys have the ability to kind of figure out a plan that works best for you. Those guidelines and those examples are just for general communication. But we do understand that there are going to be unique situations just because of the nature of the work that we do. And those things we're willing to work with you guys on. It's just a matter of like I said, kind of figuring out a plan and what makes the most sense for you guys and for the counselor and for the individual that we're trying to serve. So Julie, that doesn't really answer your question. But
Yeah, I mean, I would just say if it seems like you're spending, before this call, I had probably a 30-minute text conversation with one of my colleagues. I would just, the more, if it seems like you're spending like a substantial amount of time, but it may not be always getting to that 15-minute point. But I think in accumulation, right? When it starts adding up, I think, like you said, Jordan, I talk to the counselor and just, I think a lot of it is like, you just want to make sure the counselors understand kind of what you're experiencing. And so that, don't, so it's not a surprise. And like Jordan, I mean, I haven't spent tons of time yet with all the counselors, but I know from the trainings, everybody seems really open. And as long as there's like something that you can point to as a descriptive need, that you're meeting, then I bet you will be able to figure that out. But it is interesting, right? I think how things have changed with COVID obviously has really kind of really reworked, I think, how we spend a lot of how we spend our time. And see customized employment especially, which I know this is not just that, but there's also a lot more time spent in logistics and organizing and setting up things, that I think in other services, that time isn't necessarily as much as needed, or reaching out to business owners for informational interviews, or trying to set up this kind of discovery activities, which is in some ways similar in some ways to situational assessments or stuff like that. So I think all of that is stuff that's being, sometimes it's like the first time that the system's experiencing this. And so kind of working out a flexible system that works for everybody is, for each individual circumstances is I think what we want to try to do. What about, and I apologize, this is another, it would be nice to have, Brenda had said this, to have all of the service categories listed on the DHSRS something form. There's Brenda showing us the form, maybe. Is there something that's not, it's missing some, Brenda? Would you mind? You're on mute.
Yes, so the form, the standard form that the state puts out, or the template, which we can change, but I think it would be great if it listed, all of the things that are available, like the standard form only has job placement package, job coaching, and follow along. If it could include special assessment, employment services, job coaching, or job placement hourly. What else am I missing, guys? Follow along, that's on there. But the things that aren't listed, if they could be added to that template that is on the state site, then we're not, we can create our own, sure, but then everybody's would be in the same format. And I'm new, so,
Yeah, that's great. That's
the
great.
easier
Yeah.
that we can make it for everybody new coming in.
Right. Get
would
to speed
be-
quick. Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome. That's a great.
thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's I think one of the things that this is really good for is like, hey, that's probably not a very complex change, but it can make a big difference, right? And when people get up to speed and making sure we're not all on different pages. And I'm going to ask, well, and you're new, Brenda, so this may not be fair, but the follow-up question, which is Carla saying, what's the difference between employment services and what's under job placement? I'm assuming that would be the place that you'd go to see that, or it could I guess I'll ask you, Carla, first, if you could describe that, and then we'll ask everybody to share their opinion on that. Is that okay, Carla? I'm trying to find
Sure.
you.
So for employment services, sometimes we can do like resumes and interviewing skills, things like that under employment services, but some people put it under job placement. So I guess if that was clarified, it would be easier for us.
Okay,
And
great.
I'm just thinking along those lines, maybe if in these categories, there's a drop down for us to see that shows resume, that shows,
Interviewing.
interviewing, those certain things. What is follow along? Just a little brief description.
Yeah.
Because it does take a while to get those differences between the categories down.
Yeah.
So
And you-
I,
There are
over
service
here,
descriptions on the website.
yep, that's what I was just gonna say. I actually print them out for any new employment specialist that I get. I print it out, it's the service description for Voc Rehab, and tell them that that is their Bible and their manual. And usually the first couple days, just tell them to read it. Just read it, because everything is in there. It breaks down what each category is and what it falls under.
Mhm.
So, and is there, oh, I'm sorry, I don't want to step on somebody.
I believe that employment services and job placements are similar. It just depends on what the Voc Rehab has authorized. Like, do they need the complete job placement package? Well, job placement kind of encompasses employment services, but job placement fits a broader category of the kinds of job seeker that we mostly place. So, but maybe the employment services is more condensed in what it allows, and it does not have that job placement piece. So, but
Okay.
those are great things. That service descriptions has everything, including what you can bill. They give you examples of what they accept, and it talks a little bit more about documentation too.
Okay. And I'm like you're saying, I bet there'll always be some overlap probably, and probably that's a good thing because we want to have flexibility. It's just, it becomes maybe not a great thing when it's confusing. So could somebody explain to me, and again, it's not that there's one right answer, but under employment services, can you help people get jobs if you get a referral for employment services? What's the difference between employment services and placement, like, if that makes sense?
You would get employment services with the job placement, or job placement hourly, I guess, depending on what the client is going for. Because you're going to be using that employment services more for, like they had said, resume writing, interview skills. If you read through the description, it says, assisting with purchasing appropriate clothing, providing disability training for the employers, on the job training preparation. So any of your paperwork that you do with that, so that's all going to be part of the job placement.
Another thing that really helps me is when the VR counselor will send just little bullets of what they want me to work on. There's a lot of things that can be in employment services, but they may say, I want you to focus on resume.
Yes.
I want you to bring your A game. This is what I want you to do. That makes it so much easier than having to go back to a handbook and say, okay, I could do this, or I could do this. But what if the VR counselor is really looking for this?
Yeah, cool. And that would probably be just a good course of action would be for whoever is receiving the referral to ask the counselor if they haven't specified, like, is there an area of emphasis that you want to, you'd like me to, because like for a category like employment services, you don't, I think it'd be great to see if there's any area that they want you to kind of spend more time on, or they feel is going to be more effective in the approach based on what they know about the employment seeker. So and Carl, I don't know if that is super helpful to your question right now, but I think if we look at that, and for the training, I think we can definitely hit that and maybe pull out the tools. Placement, so people can get employment services and job placement, like they're kind of, okay. And it sounds like employment services kind of the things you do to then help the placement efforts. Does that make sense? Like the resume, close, maybe some interview practice. The placement would be the actual functional going out and searching for that job, perhaps. So one kind of supports the other, maybe. Okay. Sometimes you just get a placement referral, no employment services. I would assume that would mean the person's ready to go. You don't need to do any of that other stuff. They're coming to you with all that stuff prepared, and your job is to be the broker, the agent, to help them meet businesses. So, okay, cool. How about, and Jordan, this may be, I'm embarrassed to say, I'm not exactly sure what the answer is. How much time is authorized for the discovery process? I've not asked you that specific question so far.
So I don't remember who asked that question. Are you asking hours? Or
Autumn,
like
yeah.
Time frame, Autumn.
I read it as hours, but yeah, Autumn, what was the question? You're muted, Autumn. Oh, I don't know if she can hear us.
I don't know if she can.
Autumn.
Sorry, we share an office here.
Yeah, no problem.
I missed it.
No, that's okay. You had asked the question, how much time is authorized? Did you mean chronological time or did you mean billable time?
I just
both?
meant billable, but I had looked at the authorization and I see that there's 40 included in discovery, correct? So if you ever hit that threshold of 40 hours, because again, I'm with the office with the individual using the communication device. If we're in discovery longer than that, are we ever paid, the over, I guess?
Yes, so that would be something, and especially with customized employment and the discovery process and the customized job development, that's one that we know that there's probably going to be a lot of hours needed for that for some people. We have a standard so that it's easier for our counselors to do the plans and do the authorizations, just because they're kind of getting used to it too, and that 30 to 40 is kind of the standard. But that would just be where you would need to be in communication with the counselor as you're getting close to running out of hours, like, hey, this is about how many we think we're going to need, or however you want to have that conversation. But yes, that is a negotiables, maybe a weird term, but
Yeah,
that's something that you guys can discuss with your counselors and get some more hours if you need.
Yeah, and so so that like the 40 hours is like the target, right? The average, that we throw out there. So there's a framework for that. But I think that as you're billing, hopefully by stage or by month, you should get you'll get a sense of, hey, are we kind of, if you've used up half the hours and you're not even, when you do it online, right, there's 12 weeks that we've broken out. If you're in week 4 and you've used 20 hours, you can just make the assumption, and we could talk to me about it, but for everybody else, it looks like, hey, we're headed over. I think it'd be better to give them a heads up as early as possible, right, than run into it. But that's the beauty of, again, I know this isn't just customized employment, but it's customizable, right? So it's individual. You have that target, but it always can be individualized with, again, with the rationalization and good reason. In some other states, we've broken it up. We haven't done it yet. I was talking to you yesterday about it, Jordan. We have it in they have like 4 milestones. And so with the target hours for each milestone. So like the first, the home visit, and those of you that don't know customized employment, this is kind of the methodology. You start at home and talk to people, and then they give you people that they know that they want you to talk to get to know them before you do anything. And so talking to people, the home visit and interviewing other people, that's like the first check-in point. And we have like 10 hours estimated it'll take that. So we know, like, there's kind of a measuring, like if you run track, you have a time thing that you're shooting for. And that, we say that there's probably a 25% variance that's just typical, of like, okay, if you do those first 2 stages in like 8.5 hours or 7.5 hours in a higher to 10, that's cool. If you go up to 12.5, it's not a big deal. But anything beyond that is atypical. So we just want to make sure we're talking, and that people have good reasons. We just want to make sure, one of the worst things, especially when you're learning, or even we just want to make sure people aren't spinning the wheels, doing things that maybe we can help. But for some folks, it's just based on complexity of their lives, it'll just take longer, if people aren't known well. And that's the point of it. So awesome. And the other thing I'd want to say about customized employment and discovery is that there is a difference between billable time and chronological time, right? So that's the trick, especially with COVID, is like, we don't want it to drag on forever. But with COVID, it's tough. But that's the other kind of quality assurance check-in is like, typically in normal times, we're like 6 months is the limit, for discovery. 4 months is kind of like what we're trying to shoot for. But COVID's kind of made that all complex. So, okay, great. And the next question: mental health outcome services. So that's could somebody in that? Somebody has it's like you're like Elon Musk with your name there. You have a password for a name. He gave his kid a password name. I don't know if you know that, but who's that wrote that? SPC 1506. Are you here? Yeah, I see you. With glasses. Hey.
Well, that's mostly what I deal with is the mental health outcome services, and just trying to figure out the different, I guess, acronyms and stuff, basically. Everybody's just a little bit different. Some of them are more severe than others, like pretty much everybody else has to deal with. But I know it's a little bit different than the regular services. I'm just trying to figure out the differences.
Can I ask what your name is and where you work? What is your name and what office do you work at?
Oh, Chantel Sprang, and I'm in Watertown.
Okay. So Chantel, I might just touch base with you, and if there's anybody else that would like clarification on mental health outcome, we sure can. The unique thing about mental health outcome is it's only used by the Watertown and the Sioux Falls offices. And so I would be willing to bet that most people on this meeting don't even know what that service is or have never used it. So Chantel, that might just be a thing that we could touch base on separately. And again, we wouldn't exclude anybody that wanted to be involved in that discussion, but just because it is so unique, maybe if we touch base later on that one, if that's okay.
Yep, that sounds good.
Sorry, Jill, you did say that it's hard to hear Jordan. Jordan, you were mute. You were kind of had a slight voice there, but you spoke up there. Do you mind talking about why is that just in certain offices? It's not available statewide?
That I don't know the answer to.
Oh. We can look into it.
So I actually worked in the Watertown office. That's where I started when I was a counselor, and that's just the way that it's been. And it was kind of one of those questions that we asked about, like, why don't all of our mental health centers use it? And it just, I'm sure there's an answer somewhere. We can probably find it. I don't have it. So.
Okay. It's one of those, that's just how we've always done it, or, it was like that. Okay. Because I mean, if it's a valuable service, I'm sure that it would be great if other people could have access to that. Cool, great. The question about Medicaid, HCBS, Maurita, would you mind sharing that? You said you're on your iPhone. FA, what's that? Something assistance.
Yeah, so ever since I moved into this position, we were able to get follow along for any individual. And just this past month, individuals who do not receive HCBS funding can get follow along, but people who have it can't because it's double dipping. So I'm just kind of wondering what happened that all of a sudden we can't get follow along.
What are they saying it's double dipping for?
I don't know. I mean, the VR counselor goes, clients who receive HBS or HCBS do not get follow along from vocational rehabilitation. And then it says HBS funds should pay for follow along / should not be using HCBS funds and FA double dipping. So.
Okay. Well, let's.
Marita, that
yeah.
that's another issue, not issue. I mean, it's kind of an issue that is unique to Huron. So, and just to preface it, that's the way it is in the rest of the state. And I think that there was just some confusion that it might just be helpful for you and I and Amy and maybe Sylvia to just kind of chat about that one separately. If that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't, so HCBS should be able to pick up when VR steps away. Is that an issue, Marita?
I don't think so. I mean, it was just weird because we've always done it and always got follow along, and all of a sudden we didn't. So
follow along through VR?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it probably is just how they're calling it, the name that they're, I mean, if it's job coaching, and I don't want to speak out of turn, Jordan, but VR has this, and I don't know if you guys, this term called stability, you know, that this idea that people are kind of where they need to be with the job, and then that's how they measure closures. So Jordan, you probably know better than I do, but it may be just what they're labeling the support. But Medicaid is typically like follow along, and that's VR cannot do that. In some states, they'll have things called, in West Virginia, it's called ESES, Extended Supported Employment Services, which is, they actually do follow along for people who do not have access to Medicaid. Some states do that. I don't know if y'all do that, but typically VR is like, you know, they're done, and then Medicaid pays, but they cannot provide services typically at the same time. That may be what the double dipping is about, but that's interesting.
We've always just gotten more job coaching for individuals like that. We've never been able to do the follow along as well. So typically if it's somebody who's gonna require a little bit more, then they just give us the extra in job coaching.
And then do they shift to HCBS after the case is closed?
And they would close, yeah, then their file would close and they'd go on to like one of my job coaches.
Yeah, and Medicaid VR is a funder here, and then Medicaid funds it. So but they call that job coaching in VR world. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Awesome. Okay, sorry, still going through. Well, we have 5 minutes left. Is there anything that we haven't, you know, all this stuff. So what, Jordan's recording this, and so I'll go through it. You know, we have things that are individual that we'll follow up with, but and also all the chat is they printed, it's kind of printed out in like some kind of text document. So we can make sure that, you know, that we're hitting all this stuff during the training, and then for the individualized, like we'll follow up and talk about that. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? I would ask, my email and Jordan's email is in the announcement, but if, you know, if anything about this topic, documentation, we talked a lot about billing, but also documentation. Like, is there anything that is, you know, that is maybe getting missed or is confusing? But you have my email in the flyer. But I would ask if you could email me and anything else that we haven't talked about, or that, you know, hey, I really want to hear more about this. And I apologize, I'm down to April's. And then there's a question from Chris, inconsistency, VRC authorizes resume interviews. I think that's gonna just be part of the system, is that, and I think that's everywhere in every state, is that you have the policy, and then you kind of have each office kind of, and each counselor sometimes kind of, based on what's worked for them in the past, will kind of interpret it differently, you know, which can be, I mean, there's a good reason for that, but also can be confusing, you know, if you're used to one counselor or there's, you know, it can be tricky if there's any kind of questions that come up. And there's a lot of questions about that too, Julie, about you know, blurred services. Not every, you know, that's, so it seems like employment services placement, like there's some, seems like that's where a lot of confusion is. And that's the, you know, what this is for is, and we have a lot of people on. How many people do we have total, Jordan? I mean,
56 at one
yeah,
point. It
nice.
looked like a couple of people had to leave.
Cool. And Julie said that it's different counselor to counselor. So I think a lot of that too is talking to the, you know, I mean, I think it's tricky between, you know, if it's somebody you already know and you feel like you know what services will be beneficial, you know, making that recommendation and having that dialogue and using that teamwork kind of approach with the counselor, as opposed to like if they're referring you somebody that you haven't met before. I mean, and there's flexibility in these systems. I think, you know, during the training, you know, I was referred to placement, and I told this story, some of my informative stories about, you know, selecting a work goal and services and making sure that the service category doesn't drive the services, that the person's need drives the services, you know. And I met somebody when I first started, and I think, you know, if you were in training, you heard this story, so sorry, but hey, how you doing? The work goal was farming. And I said, oh, so you want to be a farmer, huh? And his literal response, right, was immediately, I don't want to work outside. That's what he told me, like across the table. And so, and that was, they wanted me to help him find a job. And somehow, you know, and it's a big system, and it's sometimes hard to get to know people with like traditional assessment or pen. That works for tons of people. Sometimes you need to spend a little more time. He had somehow made it, and the counselor was awesome, of course. And so it's just like, wait a second, you know, right? I don't know if this service, I don't know how I can help you become a farmer if you don't want to work outside, although, you know, hydroponic stuff and all that kind of stuff, not really happening here. But so I just think that, you know, that's an example of just how, you know, his name was John McClure. And I know that his last name's the same as the Die Hard character, and I'll never forget that. And so we just had this discussion about, you know, I just don't know how to do that, you know, and maybe could we maybe take a step back, you know, and try to maybe spend more time on the work goal, or, you know, that was a pretty dramatic example of how placement really wasn't going to work, because, but I think that just like Jordan said, I think a lot of it comes down to just being able to have a dialogue with the counselor, but then also to know too, Jordan, this is sometimes, you know, if there's kind of if you come to loggerheads or there's a place where you're not, you know, you want to respectfully preserve the relationship, but you're not quite sure what the best course of action is, that there's some kind of communication mechanism to resolve, you know, differences. I do meet, and this is not in South Dakota, but they're like, I'm doing a lot of work in other states like Florida, Michigan, and I still do meet a lot of providers who get a referral for a service. They know the service doesn't quite fit the person, and they end up doing free work. You know, they're like, oh yeah, you know, I don't want to rock the boat, so I'm going to do all this other stuff on the side. Does that make sense? Like, we don't want to do that. You know, that's not good for anybody, because the system's not getting the information they need to know which service is effective for the person. That's just, you know, you have, I mean, not saying everybody here is not ethical, but there are some people that will just do whatever needs to get done. But you know, you can't always do that for bottom line considerations if you have the skill set. So I think that leaves a lot of clients in some tough situations. So that still happens a lot, where I think there's a referral for one service, but you know, for whatever reason, the vendor doesn't feel comfortable kind of negotiating or talking about, maybe that's not the best service, or can we modify it? And then they end up, you know, kind of on the different, they have a different set of books, you know, where they're doing the work to get to the same place. So I think it's ethical, but they're not, you know, it doesn't help, I think, build a sustainable system that's responsive to employment seeker needs. So we don't want that happening, right? We want a system where I think everybody's kind of working together. So yeah, so awesome. My apologies that I was late, and about the we'll have to figure that out for the breakout rooms. We only have an hour. We may not need to do those, but I really appreciate everybody's time. And so what we'll do is email me, and Jordan, if you want, or just me, and you know, stuff we didn't talk about or stuff you want clarification for. The training that's happening on March 22nd is going to be on this topic. So, and you are informing us about what is important. And Jordan, you want to jump in?
Oh,
Yeah.
I just wanted to say I appreciate very much that you guys shared what questions that you had. That really informs what we need to cover when we do the training next month. And you guys gave me some really good ideas of things that we need to talk about on our end of things so that we can clarify it for you guys, some resources that we can create that would hopefully make things easier for you guys. So
Yeah.
I just appreciate all of your feedback and the questions that you had. The code word is heart. So when you go to fill out the attendance form, it's heart, just to go along with Valentine's Day that's already passed, but that was my thinking when I set that up. But yeah, I very much appreciate you guys. That was all I was
Yeah,
gonna add.
that's great. Thanks. Yeah. Rock and roll. All right. Well, thanks for your time, everybody. And see you hopefully in a month in March. Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate it. See ya.